back to the Brittany Hughes Show, everybody, and what a week it has been, at least in our household. I don't know about yours. I hope yours was better than ours. It turns out after over 2 years of avoiding it, my family finally tested positive for COVID. So that was how we spent our week. It's been a little bit nuts around here. It's really strange. I think we may have had it before, back when we couldn't get tests readily available, at-home tests. I cannot imagine that this was our first brush with it, but to be honest, this was kind of the weirdest. That is the dangdest virus, I've got to say. It was simultaneously extremely crappy and a bit underwhelming. Only because if you think about it, I mean, again, this is what we shut down businesses and bankrupted families for, and all the heinous things that happened trying to contain the spread of this thing, only for all of us to end up getting it anyway. It was really strange. So our almost 3-year-old got it first. He got it last Wednesday, woke up with a fever, kind of just laid around. I will tell you, I have seen just about every movie that Pixar has ever made in the last week, because that's pretty much all we did for 3 days was lay around. Husband thankfully avoided most of it. He ended up going on a work trip on Wednesday. So the good news is that he avoided it and didn't catch it. The bad news is it left me here with a couple of sick kids, and that was a lot of fun. So anyway, the toddler got it on Wednesday, ran a fever Wednesday and Thursday. He was largely okay by Friday, but that's when I got it. And it started out as a fever and had chills and body aches, and it was really awful. Only though for about 24 hours. After that, it basically just turned into a big head cold, which I still have. So I'm going to try to make it through this. It's probably going to be a slightly shorter podcast than normal because I get a little bit more winded. And also I am prone to breaking out in coughing fits. So just to forewarn you, I've got my trusty water here just in case I need it. But I wanted to make sure that I got this one done today. I wanted to make sure that we talked about this today because I am so mad. And I'm trying really hard not to be. I don't want to get all amped up because, again, prone to coughing fits. If I get all hyped up, I'm going to, end up keeling over. But I am so upset over this baby formula shortage. I am so upset over this. I had to talk about this because let me tell you the other little adventure that my family went on this past week. Not only did we have a brush with COVID, which, again, was, in my opinion, the least of the concerns when it came to what we ended up dealing with next. My family, including my extended family, ended up going on a 3-state hunt for baby formula for the one infant that we have in our family who's on it. Thank God we only have one baby that needs formula. I cannot imagine being the mom of multiples right now. I cannot imagine having multiple children in your family that need this stuff. We have one infant in our family, not even quite 5 months old, who is on formula, and we could not find this stuff anywhere. It took about a dozen people hours of searching before we finally found what basically amounted to maybe 3 weeks worth. Maybe 3 weeks worth. I had a frantic conversation with my sister-in-law, who was concerned that she wouldn't be able to feed her son. Because again, formula that is normally readily on the shelves suddenly went missing. Now, this is something that if you haven't noticed, this has been going on for several weeks now. So Bethany Mandel over at the Deseret News, she ended up doing a really good piece about this, sounding the alarm a few weeks ago. And at the time, nobody was really paying a whole lot of attention. I remember it caught my eye because I have a 9-month-old. Now, my 9-month-old, we have been very blessed that nursing has worked out. She eats solid foods like a champ. So formula and missing formula was not something that impacted us directly at home, but I do remember seeing it, and I remember being very concerned about it because I know a lot of women who do use formula for their babies, and through no fault of their own, cannot breastfeed, have stopped breastfeeding for a whole factor of different reasons, or a whole host of different reasons, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But this was something that it was a problem, but a slightly more manageable one. I remember seeing that it was out at some stores, but it seemed pretty possible that if you couldn't find what you were looking for at one store or even the second store you went to, eventually after you went to 3 or 4 stores, you could find what you were looking for. Of course, this is not always the case in some more rural areas where you don't necessarily have 3 or 4 stores to go to, but in the suburbs, in the cities, it seemed to be that you can find it if eventually you looked hard enough, you went to enough places, or it was coming into stock online. You could order some eventually. It might take you a day or two, but as long as you stayed ahead of the game, you could find it. Well, now we're in a situation where over 40% of the formula that is normally on store shelves is gone. And we're talking about nationwide here. We're talking about coast to coast. In some places, it's as high as 53%, like some places in Texas. So this is a massive issue. This is not a niche issue. I know that it normally, you think, would typically only affect moms of small children who use this stuff and that they would be the only ones to notice. Now it's getting everybody's attention, because now entire families are having to go on the hunt for this stuff. So let's talk about some of the reasons why this happened, because I have been asked on social media why I blame Joe Biden for this crisis. And believe you me, it is a crisis. When we're talking about not being able to feed babies in the United States of America, we're talking about a crisis. And this happened relatively overnight. Again, the supply problem happened gradually, but the fall off the cliff to where people can't get this stuff at all, this happened very fast. And we're going to kind of talk about why it seems that it happened very fast and why I blame Joe Biden, because I blame him up one way and down the other. Across the board, I blame him for this. Here's why. I've got about 3 reasons. First of all, let's talk about Abbott Laboratories. You may have heard this name in the last couple of days. So Abbott Laboratories is one of the plants that manufactures infant formula. There are about 3 companies that manufacture the vast majority of infant formula on the market. This one manufactures Elecare and Similac. So Similac is one of the big 2, right? You've got Similac and you've got Enfamil. And then they've got a lot of sub-varieties within that. And so this company, Abbott Laboratories, they manufacture those 2 predominantly. So this laboratory, this plant in Sturgis, Michigan, ended up shutting down and recalling a whole bunch of their products after it turns out that a couple of babies, 4 babies, ended up getting a certain type of bacteria. They got very, very sick with this certain type of bacteria, and 2 of those babies ended up passing away. Terribly, terribly sad. And they thought that it may have been because of the formula that these babies had drunk prior to coming down with this illness. So Abbott Laboratories says that they have done extensive looking into their plants, and they can find no traces of this bacteria in the formula samples that they've tested. They did find it in a place in their plant that they say was completely removed from the actual product. There's no way that it would have come into contact with the actual product. They can't find the bacteria in the product itself. But out of an abundance of caution, they recalled much of their product and ended up shutting down their plant. Well, that plant has been shuttered since February. So here, there's two main issues here. So first of all, there was a complaint filed by a whistleblower, apparently back in October. This whistleblower wasn't even interviewed until December about this. Now, the whistleblower alleged that in this factory, there were a number of security or safety concerns that had been overlooked. There were cleaning processes that had not been kept up with. There were some testing things that had not been dealt with properly, basically alleging that this plant was fudging some things and letting potentially contaminated product go out of its factory. Of course, Abbott Laboratories says that that's not true. There's a dispute over this, but that complaint was filed in October. The FDA didn't even interview this guy until December and did not go to the plant to investigate until January. So here we've got the U.S. Food and Drug Administration that's supposed to be regulating these things, right? That's how we've got all this set up. That didn't even bother to interview this guy until 2 months after his complaint was filed, didn't bother to go to the lab until January. In the meantime, 4 babies get sick, 2 of them die. The plant ends up having to recall all of this formula, which now leaves a giant gap in the market, shuts down in February. Now let's kind of recap here if I know my calendar correctly. February, March, April, we're now halfway into May, and this plant has been closed. One of the predominant manufacturers of baby formula, of which only a few companies make. So we're not talking about tons of choices, tons of supply. We're talking about a crucial product that's now just not being made out of this plant that's been closed. 6 months after a whistleblower filed a complaint, it's now been 3 months that it's been shut down. Where is the FDA in all of this? You're honestly telling me that it's taken 3.5 months to investigate, to figure out if this plant, you're telling me we can't get one plant cleaned and ready for production for baby formula in 3 months? And the unbelievable thing is that the White House, which controls the FDA, part of them, by the way, the White House is saying that they don't know when this plant is going to be operational again and when it's going to pass all of its inspections and when they're going to allow it to open up again. So, again, we're months down the road here. And now we've got a problem where families can't find this stuff on the shelves. They're driving hours to find 2 cans of baby formula that might last them 3 or 4 days. I mean, the stuff that we sent to my sister-in-law, again, we had a dozen people looking over 3 states, and we're continuing to stay on top of it so we can stay at least a week ahead, and we didn't buy her all that much time. And this is a child that has to have this stuff. Not only that, but you have babies that have certain types of allergies and certain types of stomach disorders, certain types of digestive issues where they have to have very specific types of formula. And they're not finding that on the shelves at all. Massive crisis. What is the FDA doing? Why have they been dragging their feet on this? There is no way that you can tell me that it takes that long to investigate and clean up one plant. Get on it now. And that is Joe Biden's job. And this is why I say that he's to blame. First of all, because of the FDA's absolute failure to deal with this before it became the crisis that it has. But also because you cannot beg for big government. You cannot set up a system in which big government has its hands in everything, in which you've got all of these agencies that are tasked with inspecting everything and making sure everything is clean and safe, and have all this bureaucratic red tape and have all of these departments. You cannot set up a big government that is responsible for all of this and regulates all of this, and then shrug it off and pretend like it's not your fault when there's a crisis. If this is what the FDA is for, if this is the whole point of the FDA, they should have been on this yesterday. They should have been on this months ago. We should never have gotten to the point where parents cannot feed their children. And the media are having to go into the White House briefing room saying, excuse me, but there's a crisis here, which at least to some reporters' credit, they have been doing. We should never have gotten to this point. And that is on Joe Biden. You want to run the country? You want all these departments? You want all these agencies? Then it's on you to make sure that they're doing their job, buddy. The other reason that this is entirely at his feet, if you notice, this whole Abbott Laboratories thing was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, and it is a big deal, and it has caused a massive dip in supply. That's why we talked about it. This is a big deal, and the fact that the FDA isn't doing enough to remedy this situation is a big deal. But if you look, the baby formula shortage existed long before the Abbott Laboratories recall. Real quick, and then we'll get back to the show. Make sure you head over to iTunes and hit subscribe to The Brittany Hughes Show. That way you never miss an episode and you don't have to hunt it down every time. Also, make sure that you check us out on Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, and that you watch full episodes on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Rumble. Now back to the show. So as of last November, about 11% of baby formula was not in stock. So we already had a supply issue. By April, it was up to about 31%. Now we're 40 or above in a lot of places. The supply chain crisis had already hit this market and had already hit it hard. Again, this is a product that is only used by a select number of people. If you don't have an infant, chances are you're probably not too concerned with baby formula. Probably don't even go near that aisle. But this was something that parents were already feeling before all of this. Again, why do I blame Joe Biden? Because he was instrumental in causing the supply chain crises that we have seen all throughout the economy over the last year. The massive inflation that we've seen across the market, including the price of infant formula, and the supply chain issues where we've had massive shortages of everything from canned vegetables to meat to baby food. This already existed before. Why did it exist before? Well, this is what happens when you keep the economy shut down, which Biden did at the beginning of his presidency. When you continue to hold back businesses, when you continue to flood the market with stimulus checks, with massive unemployment that keeps people from going back to work, this has an impact on the economy. And so now we're dealing with labor shortages. Now we're dealing with supply chain issues that have not gotten back to pre-COVID norms. This is a direct impact of Democrat policies, of Biden's policies, and now it's been exacerbated by a plant shutdown and product recalls because of FDA failures. This is what happens when you give government so much influence and so much control. They screw up everything they touch. And now we have parents that cannot feed their babies. So I want to talk a little bit about that too, by the way. We're going to kind of side note. This is not normally something that I would talk about on this podcast. We are a politics, current events, but I want to address a couple of the things that I've seen floating out there on social media and a couple of the things that people have said directly to me. Let's just go ahead and clear up the misconception that this whole thing could be solved in a minute if women would just breastfeed. Take it from a mother of two who nursed both of her children and was more than happy to do so. It is not possible for many women to nurse their babies. It is not possible. So to everybody out there that keeps sending me messages saying, well, just nurse your baby. Thanks. Wish it was just that easy. And it makes me really irritated when people say this because, again, I understand that if you don't have kids or if nursing came very easy to you or whatever, it might be easy to just assume that that's the way that it is. That is not the way that it is. There are many reasons why women find themselves unable to nurse their babies. Babies are often given formula in the hospital in the first couple of days after they're born if a mother is waiting for her milk to come in or if she has problems nursing in the beginning. A lot of times that can happen if a baby is born with a lip tie or a tongue tie or a cheek tie. I had a niece that was born with all three. And until they figured that out, she had a very, very hard time latching. babies that are born prematurely or babies that end up having to go to the NICU for a little while after they're born. A lot of times they will be supplemented with formula or end up switching altogether if a mother has a hard time keeping her supply up being separated from her child. Um, a lot of times women will have problems like clogged ducts or mastitis, which makes nursing very difficult, very painful. Again, we're not necessarily talking about some all or nothing situation where a woman either nurses or she doesn't. A lot of times, formula is used to supplement for a baby that's not getting enough, even though the mother is doing everything she can to breastfeed. But there are many things that can affect your milk supply. If you get sick, sometimes you can have a drop in milk supply. A lot of times, women will find themselves struggling to keep their supply up after they go back to work because, believe it or not, there is and I don't have time to go into it all right now, and it's not really the point, but the science, if you don't know it, the science behind breastfeeding and nursing is fascinating. That by itself is just mind blowing. I learned so much about it when I was pregnant with my first, just kind of, learning how all of it works. And pumping does not stimulate milk production in the same way that nursing a baby does. There is a reason that physically nursing a baby is the way that it's supposed to work. Some women have great success pumping. Other women cannot keep their supply up if they do pump. So after they go back to work, they see it dwindle and eventually go away. So there are a lot of reasons why a baby may end up on formula. Another one, like we stated earlier, is milk allergies, or if they need specific nutrients. There are babies that have certain very uncommon conditions that could lead them to needing a very specific type of specially made formula. Some of it is by prescription only. So again, to simply say, well, just nurse your baby is, it may be well-meaning. It may be to some people very obvious, and to some people it may be very easy. But that's also a very ignorant statement to simply throw out as though that solves everything. Well, just go to nursing your baby. And what would you say to a mother that adopted a child that didn't actually give birth to that child, that can't nurse that child? So again, to simply dismiss the lack of baby formula on the shelves as a non-issue because mothers can just nurse is to show an extreme ignorance for how nursing works and an extreme ignorance over the scope of babies that do end up needing formula. So there's kind of that. Another thing that I really want to address that I've seen going around, and I want to be careful how I do this because we are literally talking about the possibility of babies starving to death. And I know that sounds hyperbolic. I know that sounds crazy because, again, we are not used to hearing stuff like that in the United States of America. That's something that happens in third world countries on commercials where we're asked to donate $1 a day. We are in this country, in this culture, we are so far removed by and large from something that dire, the idea of babies dying because they don't have proper nutrition. That sounds like a hyperbolic statement, but that's literally what we are talking about. We have already had doctors acknowledging that there are children that have come into their office in recent weeks that have been diagnosed with malnutrition, being underweight, and failure to thrive because they're not getting the nutrition that they need. Moms are starting to dilute formula with too much water to stretch it and make it go further. So kids are not getting the calories that they need. They're not getting the nutrients that they need. And they're coming into the doctor underweight and malnourished. This is actually happening right now in real time. So I understand that in light of that, there is a desperation among parents and a desperation among those of us who are trying to help to come up with any solution. I have seen the picture going around online. People have sent it to me. People have left it in comment threads on my page. The picture going around online of the homemade infant formula recipe from like 1960. You might have seen it. It's a combination of evaporated milk and Karo syrup, and my grandmother used this recipe for all 5 of her children. I will readily admit my grandmother used this recipe for all 5 of her children, all 5 of whom survived, are alive to this day. And I understand that that is what people used to do back in the day. Ready-made infant formula didn't really come about. Actually, the first time it came about was in the mid 1800s, but it really wasn't until the 1980s that store-bought baby formula really became a thing. So I understand kind of going back to old wisdom and trying to figure out, okay, your baby has to eat something. My advice: be extremely careful when talking about homemade formulas. Some people are going to come right out and say, don't use these things at all. I don't want to say that, even though, to be honest, I don't think that using homemade formula is a good idea. It's really, really hard to tell a mom who doesn't have anything else to give her baby not to do something that she thinks could at least buy her some time. The only thing I really want to reiterate, please, if this is you or if this is someone that you know that you are close to, do not make homemade formula and give it to your baby without talking to your doctor first. Please do not do it. There are contamination issues. There are bacteria concerns. Again, the fact that they used to do this, and I know some of you did it with your babies. I know that some of you were fed with this stuff. My mother was fed with this stuff. I understand. And because you survived, because your kids survived, everything is okay and this is no big deal. That's simply not the case, because a lot of babies didn't survive. Like I said, there are major contamination concerns. A lot of these homemade formulas lack key nutrients that can help babies thrive, key vitamins, things that babies need. Please talk to your doctor first. Please make sure that there are not other options. There may be samples that they can give you. There are breast milk banks that you can look into. Please, please, please just make sure that you don't jump to an internet recipe to solve this problem, and that you talk to your physician first. If, however, this is not affecting you directly, if you happen to have a baby that is nursing, if you happen to not have a baby at all, if this is not affecting you, it's gonna. I can guarantee you that it's gonna. First of all, you have never seen, you think people fought over toilet paper in the grocery stores? Oh my gosh, we run out of toilet paper. We have options. They might not be very good options. They might not be options you really want to think about. But running out of toilet paper is not a crisis. There's a reason people joked about it on social media back when it was happening under COVID. If you run out of toilet paper, it might be really unappetizing, but you can grab a bottle of water and a washcloth if it comes to that. You can go out in the backyard and grab a maple leaf. You've got things that you can use if you're out of toilet paper. If you're out of baby formula, not so much, particularly if your child is on one of the special kind that you can't just go out and get a brand name of, or that you can't just wait around for. So if this continues much longer, you are going to be made aware of it, because moms are going to start hitting the panic button in a major way, even more so than we have currently seen. You think women are mad because they might not be able to find an abortion? You've never met a mom who can't find Enfamil. I can promise you that. This is massively going to impact the November elections. Massively impact. There is no way, again, that parents are going to be wasting $5 a gallon gas traipsing all over town to try to find one lone can of Similac and this not have an impact. And these moms, by the way, this is not just moms. Again, I told you about our experience with our family. One baby, one mom, and we have a dozen people looking for this stuff. This is now going to impact dads. It's going to impact aunts and uncles. It's going to impact coworkers. Everybody is going to be made aware of this, because we're all going to be out hunting for formula for somebody that we know. And so that's your assignment this week. Your homework this week. If I can give you some homework this week, it's to do that one thing. Find a mom in your life, whether it's a relative, whether it's a friend, whether it's a coworker. If this is not directly impacting you, find a woman in your life who has a baby who needs formula and help her. Help her. A lot of these moms, can you imagine? Again, my sister-in-law comes from a fairly affluent family. She has a large family on both sides. She has people that are willing to help her. She has she lives in a suburban place where she's got access to lots of grocery stores that she can stay on top of. Imagine if you were a mom of multiples and you have to feed more than one baby. Imagine if you were a mom in a rural area with 2 grocery stores, or a mom in an urban area that's overpopulated, that has massive demand and little supply. Imagine if you are one of those moms. Find a mom in your life, ask her if she needs help, and help her. A lot of these moms, they can't take a day off of work to go find formula, to go hunt this down, and they're going to have to start. So find somebody that you can help and make sure that you get on that. We're going to be back next week, hopefully with better news to talk about, and we're going to be staying on top of this. Again, if you or someone that you know is really up against it and you need help, or if you have a story to share, make sure that you drop it in the comments. We will do everything that we can to try to help you, and we hope you have a fantastic week ahead. God bless. We'll see you back here next week.